Good morning, welcome to the program. I'm Ashley Gillen. It's the scenario politicians in this place were trying to avoid. Just a fortnight after the offshore processing legislation passed through the Parliament, we're now in a situation where we're seeing another rescue operation underway this morning off the coast of Indonesia. This time, 150 people who first issued a distress call more than, 24 hours ago now. They were found by a merchant vessel in the early hours of this morning. It took 23 hours for them to be spotted after sending out that first distress call. Let's take you through what we know in this developing news story this morning. There are now 3 merchant vessels on the scene helping with this rescue effort. 6 survivors have now been recovered. There's been no confirmed sightings of the boat they were on, and there's also no confirmed reports of any bodies being recovered either. There are 2 Indonesian vessels that are also on their way to this location at the moment. 2 Australian aircraft will arrive by about 11 o'clock East Coast time this morning to also help with this operation. Also HMAS Maitland on its way too. This is a situation that has been developing all morning. Little information trickling through at this stage, but 3 merchant vessels, after just the 1 merchant vessel being there for most of the morning, 2 other vessels have arrived just in the last couple of hours or so to help with this effort. As I said, the first distress calls came through yesterday. The call complained of engine trouble. No sign of the boat, but it is feared that this boat did sink overnight. Let's bring in our panel this morning. Joining me here in the Canberra studio, the Labor MP Andrew Leigh, and with us also the Liberal MP Kelly O'Dwyer. Good morning to both of you.
Ashley. Morning,
Andrew Leigh, let's first start with you. We are going to be getting a full update from the Home Affairs Minister Jason Clare in about an hour and a half's time. But how disappointing is it that so far the message about the government's new tougher border protection measures just clearly haven't flowed through yet to the people jumping on these boats in Indonesia?
Well, Ashley, this is an awful tragedy to be watching unfold, and it's exactly the reason why we've put in place this agreement flowing out of the Houston report. We have the Memorandum of Understanding now with Nauru and with Manus Island to try and prevent exactly this sort of tragedy. I suspect what you're seeing is 2 things. Firstly, some people have paid a people smuggler before the 13th of August when we said people risked being sent to Nauru and Manus, and their feeling is if they've paid their money, they may as well go ahead with the journey. And the other is, I suspect, people smugglers continuing to deceive vulnerable asylum seekers about what will happen if they come to Australia. We're working very hard to try and get the message out to people in Indonesia of the fundamentals of the policy. If you're an asylum seeker in Indonesia, you will not be made better off by taking a dangerous boat journey to Australia than you will by going to the UNHCR and applying for asylum in the usual way. We're doing that to try and deter these boat tragedies. And people say it's a hard-hearted approach, but for me, these drownings are just one of the most horrendous things you can possibly see in politics. Christmas Island tragedy, the CFMUE, I mean, we've had so many of these, and we need a set of policies that will deter people from making the dangerous boat journey while taking more humanitarian entrance. We've boosted that intake from 13,750 to 20,000, which I'm very pleased about.
We have seen a spike, if anything, with the number of boats arriving in Australian waters since that legislation passed through the Parliament. We've seen about 20 boats arriving in the past 2 weeks. 2 boats we know just arrived yesterday. Kelly O'Dwyer, do you think this new policy is actually going to make a difference? Is it going to stem the flow of boats, or do you expect the people smugglers to simply go on ignoring it?
Well, Ash, let me first say that I do agree with Andrew that this is a terrible tragedy that has been unfolding that we've heard about in the last 24 hours, and he's right to say that this is the latest of a long line of terrible tragedies that have occurred when people have made the dangerous journey to get on a boat to try and come to our shores. You know, we do welcome the fact that there is now a Memorandum of Understanding with Nauru. However, you know, I must say to you, Ash, that it concerns me greatly that just 12 months ago, when the Prime Minister, you know, was last at the Pacific Island Conference, she could have easily discussed with the President of Nauru the idea of opening an offshore processing centre. She chose not to do that, and in that time we've seen more than 11,400 people make the journey. That's just over that that 12-month period. So there have been, since the changes to the Coalition's very strong border protection measures, there have been more than 20,000 people who have actually made that dangerous journey to come here to pay people smugglers in order to arrive in Australia. Now we hope that the government's legislation works. However, I must say to you that we know what absolutely does work, and that is the Coalition's policies, which includes not just offshore processing, but temporary protection visas, and where it is safe to do so, turning boats around. I do agree with Andrew that we need to send a very strong signal that it is not worth it for people to make this dangerous journey. So, you know, we are united absolutely in that. We certainly don't want to see any more tragedies occurred as we have heard about today.
Andrew, I'm going to put a question to you that a lot of our viewers have been writing in with this morning. When you look at the map showing the situation unfolding this morning, I think we've got that to show you. It's very clear that this is right off the Indonesian coast. This is a long way from Christmas Island. It's a 2-hour flight indeed from Christmas Island to get there. Some of our viewers have been saying, why is Australia even involved in this rescue operation when it's clear that it's right off the Indonesian coast? There are merchant vessels there. Does Australia always need to get involved in this? Is that a debate we need to have here or not?
Ashley, it's being a good neighbour. I mean, if your neighbour's house is burning down, you're not obliged to go and help them get out the window, but it tends to be a good thing to do if you're a decent human being. So just as we went to Indonesia's assistance in the tsunami to try and save lives there, so too I think it's appropriate that if we have naval vessels which are not being involved in critical operations, that they're used to try and save lives. That's all it's about. It's saving lives. As you say, this is the Indonesian sphere of influence, but it's just the decent thing to do.
You'd agree with that, Kelly O'Dwyer?
Well, look, you know, I would agree with Andrew. We need to behave in a very humanitarian way, and it is decent to go to people who are, you know, in harm's way, absolutely. But I think we need to ask the broader question, why is this actually occurring? You know, what has led to the very, very significant increase in the number of people who have made this dangerous journey? And, you know, this is something that Andrew doesn't want to talk about. This is something that the government doesn't want to talk about. They actually need to take responsibility for the fact that in changing the border protection laws that we had in place in August of 2008, they have given a green light to people smugglers. They have actually made it possible for them to run these organised crime syndicates within our region to encourage people to make this dangerous journey. Now that is frankly a disgrace, and it has led to the tragedies that we have seen today.
We are going to have more on this later in the program. We're going to be speaking with Amnesty International's refugee coordinator to get Amnesty's view on this situation that is unfolding. As we get any developments in here at Sky News, we will, of course, keep you up to date as those come through. Just repeating, though, the latest information we have is that 6 survivors have been rescued. They're on board a merchant vessel that is helping with this rescue operation at the moment, but we believe around 150 people are in distress. So it is a pretty serious situation underway at the moment off the coast of Indonesia. We'll be back with more political debate on some other issues just after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. As we've been discussing this morning, there is a developing story coming out of Indonesia. A rescue underway right now. 150 asylum seekers in distress. They were on their way to Australia when they had issues with the engine on the boat. We know that 6 survivors have been rescued. There are 3 merchant vessels on the scene now conducting that rescue operation. More Indonesian vessels on their way as well. Australian aircraft due to arrive in a couple of hours to help too. So as developments come to hand, we'll bring you up to date with those. Right now, though, we are going to move on to some of the political issues around today. Also, to let you know, we're standing by to hear from the Shadow Treasurer, Joe Hockey. He's in Adelaide today, and he's going to be holding a news conference soon. So as soon as he starts speaking with journalists, we'll take you there live to Adelaide. In the meantime, though, Andrew Leigh and Kelly O'Dwyer are with me on our panel of politicians. Let's look at the dental health scheme that the government announced yesterday. It's worth $4 billion. The focus here is on children. We're going to see children aged between 2 and 18 every couple of years. They're going to be able to have about $1,000 spent on them on basic dental care. It's something that doesn't kick in until 2014, which is after the next election. There was some confusion yesterday about exactly how this is going to be funded. We know the government has a pretty tight budgetary position at the moment. We heard from the Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, and the Health Minister, Tanya Plibersek, on this yesterday, and they seem to have some different messages going on. Have a listen.
Well, the announcement today is about a large saving, that is through the closure of a scheme designed by the former government, by the Howard government. Indeed, the Leader of the Opposition was personally involved in its design, and it's been the subject of economic blowouts, and it's also been the subject of lack of fairness. That scheme is being replaced by a better and more cost-effective set of arrangements.
We have been struggling to get the support of the Greens and the crossbenchers to close it. There is not billions of dollars in the budget for this. We are dealing with it quarter by quarter, so there is no money to be redirected. It is not in the forward estimates. We need to find a new $4 billion, and we can.
Look at what's happened today. The government's announced a $4 billion dental program, and there is a flat contradiction between the Prime Minister, who said that it's not new money, and the Health Minister, who says that it is. Now, you know, this is where, if I may say so with respect, you need to be focusing on the fact that the Gillard government is writing cheques that it can't cash.
The Liberal frontbencher George Brander speaking to us on Sky News last night. Andrew Leigh, is this a saving or something the government is going to need to find in terms of more cash to spend? Because we know that this program is replacing some other very costly programs underway at the moment.
And so, Ashley, I'm going to apologise to viewers because there's no other way to answer this than to go into some of the arcane things about budgeting. A budget is a statement of intentions, and our intention has always been to close down the chronic disease dental scheme for the reasons the Prime Minister said. It's open to millionaires and doesn't support kids on Struggle Street. That's not in the forward estimates because we would always intend to close it down. But when the scheme closes down, it means the government doesn't have to pay its cost. And so it's a saving in the government budget, in the government expenditure, but it doesn't give us new money in the budget because the budget's a statement of intentions. Clear as mud?
Yeah, not really. But Andrew,
that's just one of the things about the way budgets work. So,
Andrew, the point here is yesterday there was a lot of confusion about this. Are you saying that in the end, when the numbers are all added up, that this is going to work out as a saving because this other scheme was more costly than the $4 billion announced yesterday?
We will not spend this money, and this is money the government would have otherwise misspent, in my view. I don't think it's a good scheme Mr Abbott set up. But in terms of the accounting document that is in the budget, it doesn't affect those numbers. The budget is always a statement of what the government intends to do. We intend to shut down the scheme. Therefore, the cost of the scheme don't appear in the budget.
This is still new money in terms of the $4 billion that the government needs to find from somewhere.
Yes, no, that's
exactly.
absolutely
right.
So
that's the point here. How is the government going to fund this scheme?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognise this is a good change. I had a dentist in my office yesterday telling me about some of the dodgy dealing that he had seen through Mr Abbott's chronic disease dental scheme. This is a better scheme. You'll be able to take your Medicare card to the dentist in order to get not just checkups but also basic dental work done for kids, and that applies to 3 million Australian kids, everyone on family tax benefit Part A. The government will find savings in the budget. We've found $100 billion of savings over recent budgets. We've got a strong track record in doing that. Often the opposition castigates us for that, so when we means tested the baby bonus or the private health insurance rebate, they criticised us for that, but we have a record of finding savings and we'll continue to do so.
So the government still needs to find where this $4 billion is going to come from.
But
Let's get Kelly O'Dwyer's view on this, because I think we've got that point. We have seen this program that Tony Abbott introduced as Health Minister. Kelly, the chronic diseases dental scheme, that's been replaced by the package announced by the Health Minister yesterday. The Health Minister was scathing about this chronic disease dental scheme. She said it was the worst piece of public policy she's seen in its portfolio. She was saying that it was open to rorting. Do you agree that that scheme is one that needed to be shut down?
Well, she might want to look at some of the schemes that the government's delivered, you know. She might just want to look at pink bats. She might want to look at the rorting with the Schools Halls program, which, of course, they needed to do an investigation into because of the billions of dollars that were blown out. I think it was something like $14 billion. But putting that to one side, I do feel a bit sorry for Andrew because he has to come onto this program today and contort himself into a whole variety of different positions to try try and balance out the blatant contradiction between what the Prime Minister was saying, which was wrong, which is effectively what Andrew said, and what the Health Minister was saying, which was that it needs to be new money. I mean, this is new money. The government already said it was going to scrap this program, and it wasn't accounted for in the budget. So this idea that it's a savings is simply not correct. The government needs to find new money. This is on top of the billions of dollars of new money that they need to find with the National Disability Insurance Scheme, with Gonski, when they finally actually respond to Gonski. This is in addition to all of the new supposed spending measures that they say they're going to deliver on. Now, don't take my word for it. I mean, I was reading the Australian Financial Review today, and they actually have predicted that there's going to be a $120 billion blowout by 2020. So the government, far from being economically responsible, is absolutely out of control. And this is in a climate where we've got very significant net debt. This is in a climate where the government has not delivered one surplus. It used to be a time where in government you actually delivered surpluses. You actually saved a bit of money before you announced new spending measures, and we can have no confidence, Ashley, that they're actually going to deliver it at all, because you only need to look at some of the announcements that they made before the last election, where they said that they were going to deliver 260 new childcare centres. They delivered, I think, something like 38, and then they scrapped the program. I mean, they're really big on promises, but they're very poor on delivery, and they simply are not credible and can't be trusted.
So, Kelly, when it comes to that chronic disease dental scheme, though, do you acknowledge that there were serious problems with that scheme introduced by the coalition government? And are you saying that this is a dental program that the coalition would scrap if it comes into office?
Well, look, we're obviously going to look at all programs, and we're going to make announcements regarding our policies well before the next election, particularly when we understand what the budget position is going to be. We thought it was important that people with chronic diseases be given additional assistance, which is why this whole scheme was developed in the first instance. I think it's important to understand the intent behind the scheme and the reason why it was brought about. Now, I'm not going to make policy announcements on your program today. We're well out before the next election.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. You've been outranked here by your Shadow Treasurer, Joe Hockey, who's speaking right now in Adelaide.
Australian people.